Hello, everyone. This is Tony Perlatti, Director of the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections. Sorry for the technical difficulty there. Um, like in the election world, you have to be able to adjust on the fly and adapt. And so that's what we did here. Staff were testing the system since 9 o'clock this morning, and all of a sudden it decided it wanted to break. But here we go. So I am going to go ahead and start this up right from the start where I was, all the things that I was saying that none of you heard. You will now get to hear that. And so welcome. Today, what I want to do is provide information relative to the voter registration process. It is the first step an individual must take in order to vote in an election. And it's simple to register. There are a few requirements you must follow to successfully register, but it is simple. Also, there are some rules pertaining to individuals and organizations helping others registering to vote, and we will hit on that today. So for today's topics, I am going to go over and cover various aspects of voter registration, starting with paper forms, how to complete the paper form, ID verification processes, board notifications that we send out pertaining to registrations, and some key deadlines. And I will then also hit on online voter registration process. Now, for today's presentation, attendees will have their microphones muted. And if you have any questions, please enter them into the chat or into the QA section on the in those options under more. At the end of the presentation, and depending on how much time is available, I will try to answer some of those questions. And in the days following this presentation, my staff and I will be creating an FAQ document that is relative to the presentation and trying to address questions that appear in the chat or QA section that I can't get to over the course of the presentation. Hopefully, the FAQ document will be completed by the July 4th holiday, and we'll get that posted up on the board's website, as well as we will have a section where today's Zoom will be linked, I believe, on our YouTube channel to for people to access who can't attend today live. So with that, let's get this here. Let's get into the paper registration. So sorry about that. So the Ohio Secretary of State creates the actual voter registration form, and the form needs to include spaces for fields that are required by the National Voter Registration Act of 1993, as well as Ohio law regarding registrations in the form. So there are things in an Ohio Revised Code and statute that dictate items that need to appear on this form. Now, the Secretary of State last updated Ohio's registration form in February of this year. So February of 2026, that is when this form was last updated. And that is what you are looking at on your screen, the most recent version of that form. Now, the form has an official name, and it's known as Form 4010. And that is the name prescribed by the Ohio Secretary of State for that form. And that statement prescribed by the Ohio Secretary of State is a key item that I'll hit back on a little bit later on. Now, this most recent version of the form, the latest design, it changed the format that's the main change to the form. Where the previous form, at the top of that page was a bunch of instructions, a bunch of legalese, and then at the bottom was the actual form that you would fill out. Now, the way that this has been changed, the format of the document, those instructions and legalese are no longer at the start of the form, but they appear throughout the form. Near the section that that information or instruction pertains to, which actually I think will ultimately be more helpful to voters because the information will be right next to the field that they need to complete. Also, this new version of the form is laid out in more of a checklist format with required fields being highlighted. And from our experiences in Cuyahoga County, we've always tried to do checklist highlighting because it's helpful to voters to make sure that they are getting all the correct fields that they need to. Now, this form also added attestations to the bottom of the page. A previous version had something dealing with assistance, and this one has that assistance piece, but it also has a compensation attestation that was not present on the previous forms. Now, here is a key point that I want you to take away from this, and this is something that the board gets questions on a regular basis. The form as you see it on the screen is the latest version of the registration form. It is what the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections and the Secretary of State have available on our websites. So if you come into our office, you go to our website, that is what you're going to get. But, and here's the key part, if you have a previous version of the form, and this is the prescribed form, so that's that prescribed. So if you have a Form 4010 prescribed by the Ohio Secretary of State that is a previous version of the registration card, the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections will accept that registration form as long as that prescribed by the Secretary of State appears on it. That goes for a form that you would get directly from the Secretary of State's website that you may have previously received, or if it is a document that you previously picked up at the Board of Elections here in Cuyahoga County or printed off of our website. And that prescribed notation will appear either in the header or footer of the document. And so again, you want to look for that. If it says prescribed by the Ohio Secretary of State and it is a previous format, the Board of Elections in Cuyahoga County will go ahead and take that document and process it. All right. Now, I want to go over the required fields on this document, which are important. There are 7 of them. On the new version, there will be 11 items in the checklist, but 7 of those fields are actually deemed required, that we must have something there in order for the board to process them and consider it a complete application. And I will go over the required fields that you must complete, and then I'll circle back to the 4 that are not required. So right at the top, number 1, are you a U.S. citizen? It's a simple yes or no. You have to be a United States citizen to vote in Ohio. So if it's yes, we'll continue on. If that box is marked no, then the board stops and will not process the card any further. Question number 2, will you be at least 18 years of age on or before the next general election? In Ohio, you must be a resident of Ohio for 30 days prior to election day, and you need to be 18 years of age by the next general election, by the November election. I don't want to focus on this, but I do want to comment that in a primary election this past May, that was a partisan primary, you could be 17 years old and vote in that election as long as you're going to be 18 by November. And that is because in that primary we just had, you are not electing the individuals, say, to the office of governor or to county executive or to judge. You were figuring out who was going to be nominated in advance on to November, and that's the difference. So we don't want to worry about 17-year-olds at that point, other than you cannot be 17 and vote in November's election unless you will be 18 by election day. So that's question number 2. Question number 3, name. This is your printed name. You need to print, and please do it legibly to help us out, your last name and your first name. Middle name is not required. Suffix isn't required, but the suffix is extremely helpful with juniors and seniors, second, third, fourth of someone with the same name. It helps us to better identify you and help poll workers when you go to vote the polls. So you want to print your last name and first name. Section 4, residential address. This needs to be the location in which you reside, your permanent home. It cannot be a post office box. It cannot be a commercial address. This is the place in which you intend to return when you leave home, the place where you leave your toothbrush and you intend to use it when you return home. That is your registration address. That's what we need to have in that field. County isn't necessarily required, but your street address, your city, your zip code, and if you are in an apartment or a condominium complex and there's multiple suites, we do want your suite number so we can hone in and identify exactly where you are to get you the voter information that we need to provide to you. So that's important. Residential address is permanent address and required. We're going to skip over 5, not required, and go to 6, that is required. That is your birth date. Very simple, month, day, and year. That's what we need there in that field. Then we'll skip to number 8, and this is identification. Identification is required. Now, there are 3 things that can appear in this field. One is your driver's license number. Another is your state ID number if you have a state ID. And the third is the last 4 digits of your social security number. Now, on the form created by the Secretary of State, the preference is a driver's license or state ID number. However, it truly is an or statement. A person needs to provide either their driver's license, state ID number, or the last 4 of their social security number. So if Cuyahoga County Board of Elections gets a card and the last 4 of the social are there and not the driver's license number, we will process. Okay, so I want individuals to know that. And you do not need to put both, just one of those 2. And that's in item 8. Now I'm going to circle back in the next slide on number 8 and talk a little bit about verification of that information. But now I'm going to move on to number 11, the last required field, which is your signature. The signature is important. It should be hopefully cursive style, if that's your official signature. And this is what will get saved into our database on site here in Cuyahoga County. That signature is what we will use to put into the electronic poll books. So if you go and vote at the polls on election day, it is what the poll worker is comparing your electronic poll book signature to on that day to what we have on file. So that's important. This is the signature that if you sign a petition and that petition is filed here, we are using that signature to verify or part of our verification process to determine if your petition signature would be valid or invalid. It's an important mark. It is your legal voter registration mark. So make sure you do not omit that. Those are the 7 required fields. Quickly going to hit on the other 4 that aren't. Number 5, mailing address. That mailing address, that could be a P.O. box. That could be a commercial address. That is where if you put that P.O. box and we want to send you voter education information, it'll go to the P.O. box versus your residential address. However, again, the residential address is needed because that's what we'll use to confirm if you're if that's where you actually reside or not. Number 7, phone number says recommended. It's not required. It's helpful if there's a question with something, whether it's voting, petitions, or whatever it may be, for us to get in touch with you. Number 9, previous address. Again, helpful information, not required. So if you are registered and you change, it can help us to connect dots if we need to get in touch with you and we're not able to do that successfully at your new address. Change the name. The registration card is a document where that's where you can update your name. So if you say we're married, divorced, or something else happens where your name changes, you can go ahead and putting that former information on there helps us to identify you in our system if you're currently registered and make those changes. So those are those 11 fields that we have. Now, before I move on to the bottom, the attestation, I wanted to hit on what happens when the board receives a registration card and it's missing one or more of those 7 required fields. That card is not processed. We need to have all 7 items. And so if we can't process it, what we will do is we don't send the card back. The card is our property. We will send you a letter letting you know that we couldn't process the card, and we will include a blank registration card for you to complete and send that back to us. So we will notify you and we will tell you the piece of information that was missing, so you can fill out the entirety of the card, not just the piece that was missing, but the whole new card, and send it into us. Really, the only time that we don't mail a card to someone if the application was incomplete is if they omit the residential address, because we don't know where to send it to. So if you're newly registering, you leave out your address, we can't mail you a new card because we don't know where you are. Now, going down to the attestation, the board processed the cards based on the information in those 7 fields I went over. If the attestations are fully completed, partially completed, or not completed, the board is going to process those cards in Cuyahoga County based on the 7 fields, the 7 required fields we went over. Now, if you are helping someone, you should fill out the assistance attestation. But again, if you don't, or you don't put all the pieces there, we're going to process the card. If you are working for an organization, you do need to put the compensation attestation information in there so we can process it. But again, if it's not fully completed, if it's partially completed, we will go ahead and process the card because we're going to process it based on those 7 fields. And regarding the assistance attestation, there's a box there that speaks to the form is completed on behalf of the person due to disability, blindness, literacy. There is no litmus test as to whether an individual is disabled or not. That is taken at face value. Whatever the person says, that's how that works. So we do not make someone engage in physical activities or prove any kind of disability that they may or may not have. It's all taken at face value, and know that. Also want to point out, in Ohio law and the Ohio Revised Code, that law states that no registration, change of residence, or change of name form, and that's this registration form, shall be rejected solely on the basis that a person registering an applicant failed to sign the person's name or failed to name the employer who is employing that person to register the applicant. That is lifted right out of the Ohio Revised Code, meaning that if the attestation portions at the bottom are not complete, the board will not just flat out reject the card. We're going to process it based on the 7 required fields. All right. Now, I told you I was going to circle back to identification, the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and the Social Security Administration. So we know that in field 8 on the card, that's where identification is placed. And so what happens is when the Board of Election gets a paper card and we data enter that card into our on-site voter registration system, when we put the identification information in, whether it's the last 4 of the SOCH, state ID, driver's license number, or all of the above, there are 2 automated verification processes that occur. And those are set up through the Secretary of State and the BMV and the Social Security Administration. What happens is these automated processes happen in which information, name, date of birth, the driver's license number, ID number, or social security number is checked against the BMV and Social Security Administration databases. If there is an exact match of that information, that comes back to the Board of Elections that there is no issue or question regarding the identification, that it matches what's on file with those agencies. And that happens and everyone goes about their business. However, if it is not an exact match, if one of the numbers is off, they're transposed, if it's not correct, that information is also provided to the Board of Elections, and that is noted. And when that happens, your registration record is placed into an inactive status, and then we'll mail you a specific notice regarding that mismatch information. If it comes back, everything's fine, your registration is in an active status, and I'll get into active versus inactive in a minute. So know that those things are automated. That information comes back to us. When we're doing those paper cards, that information comes back to us typically between, like, say, 1 to 3 days of us processing the card. Sometimes it's instantaneous, other times it's not, but usually by about 3 days, we'll get the information back, whether it's a match or not. So that happens, again, through automated processes, and it happens to everyone, whether it's a newly registered individual or someone who is updating their voter registration. Now, another key part of that is, let's say, for example, you provide just your driver's license number. We input it. It goes through the check. There is no social security number given. The Social Security Administration is still going to look, name, date of birth, and see if they have an exact match. And if so, they will provide us with your social security number, and we will put that into the system, and vice versa. If you put the last 4 of your social security number, and it goes through this automated process, whether you have a driver's license or a state ID number, if there's an exact match there, that will be provided back to the Board of Elections, and we will input that information into our registration database. And that's really how we get both driver's license and last 4 of social security in our system for everyone, is through the automated process. So that happens all in the background with staff working various reports that we get. Now, we go through, we put everything in, we have all the required fields, we go through the automated processes, and then what happens next is the board needs to send out some notices. And this starts with everyone, whether newly registered or updating their registration, will get a acknowledgement notice. And this acknowledgement notice is mailed to the registration address that was in section 4 of the form. It is mailed via non-forwardable postcard. And this document will identify for the individual how we have your name and address in our system. It will tell you the precinct that you are assigned to. It will tell you the polling location with that polling location's address that you are to utilize if you go vote on election day. And will also tell you the various districts that you're eligible to vote on, meaning what is your U.S. congressional district, what is your Ohio House of Representatives districts, and so on like that. Now, if the postcard is successfully delivered to that registration address, your registration remains active and you are ready to vote a regular ballot on election day. But if that postcard is returned to the Board of Elections undeliverable, your registration is immediately made inactive, and that puts you in a must vote provisional status. Now, really, one of the purposes of this acknowledgement notice, besides telling you your precinct and poll place assignment, is to confirm that you actually are residing at the address that you listed on the form. And that one of the ways that is done is through successful delivery of mail. Now, I've been talking about active and inactive. Let me go into that just a little bit. An active registration means that we successfully matched your identification. We were able to send our acknowledgement form to your address. It went through. It's not undeliverable. And this affords the individual who registered the ability to vote a regular ballot on election day or during early in person or voting by mail. An inactive registration, that requires the individual to confirm their registration. And they confirm the registration by either voting provisionally during early in-person voting or voting provisionally on election day, or you can provide the board with a new registration card. And then we need to get that prior to the close of registration, or a confirmation card, which I'll get into. You need to complete that. An individual, though, who is in an inactive registration status is not able to vote by mail. So if an application comes in, we will reject that because you are not in an active status. So that is something why it's important to make sure that you get your registration status updated to active. Now, that acknowledgement card that we talked about that comes back undeliverable puts you in an inactive status. The board now is required to subsequently mail you a confirmation notice, and this notice goes out via forwardable mail. And let's see here. So what you're looking at now is the acknowledgement notice. This is like an example of a confirmation notice. This is the one that the Secretary of State has on their website. So this will go out to you in this form, whether sometimes the mail gets bounced back undeliverable and you actually are there. And hopefully then the confirmation notice gets through. If it gets through, though, you do need to complete this and send it back to us for, again, providing us with name, address, and sending it back. Now, if you happen to move since submitting your registration card, it is forwardable. And if this goes to your new address, you need to fill out the form with your new address, send it back to us, and we'll go ahead and update your registration to that new address. So that is this confirmation only goes out when the initial acknowledgement is undeliverable. Now, there is potentially another mailing that can go out, and that is with the automated identification check, the BMV SSA checks. If that comes back as a mismatch, then there is a Secretary of State form called Form 10C. In this notice, and I think I have one of those. This is a 10C form. This will go out to you, and we will check what is non-matching from your BMV or SSA record. And then you need to go ahead and fill out the form with the information that we are seeking. And what we're seeking will be checked off somewhere between boxes A through D. You need to, though, put your first, last name, date of birth, put your address, and then if we're missing driver's license or if that's not correct, put that, or the last word of SOCH, sign it, date it, get it back to us. When we get that, we can update your record and get you back into an active status. Because if you are with a mismatch of this data, you will be inactive. So again, it's important to pay attention to what we send you. Now, there are a few deadlines that people need to pay attention, and not all of them necessarily apply all the time. Here is one that does. The close of registration. That is 30 days prior to an election. That is, by law, the close of registration. Now, if you are a person who individually filled out your paper card, you need to get it to us by that close of registration. So that is your deadline. If you are an individual who is helping neighbors and other people with registration, and you are not part of a bigger, larger organization that is doing registration drives, if you help that individual and they give you their registration card and you have it in your possession, you need to get that delivered to us within 10 days of receipt, 10 days of that individual signing that card. So you have a 10-day deadline. If you are an organization that is out doing registration drives, you need to have those cards that you collect to us within 5 days of completing. And again, I want to circle back to the bottom of the form with the attestations. If you're working for an organization, you would be completing that and getting that card to us within 5 days. If you're helping people in your community, in your neighborhood, neighbors, family members. That would be the top attestation. Get it to us within 10 days. But again, board is processing forms based on the 7 required fields. And another thing I want to hit on is with the former versions of the form. So the prescribed forms that are not the most recent version, I said that the board would accept them, and we do accept them. But what we do is we apply current day rules on those 7 fields. So, which really shouldn't be an issue for most, but you'd be surprised. Some people have cards out there that maybe they got 15 years ago to where you didn't have to put a driver's license or social security number on it. And if you had that form, we would accept it. But if that piece of information was missing on the form, then we would reject it because we are applying today's rules on the required fields, not the required fields rules that were in effect when that particular registration form was published. So that's important. Okay. That's paper cards. Now you have online registration. There is no difference in the value between a paper registration and an online registration. They both provide voters with the same access to the elective franchise. Really, it's only a different medium in which you are using to register. Now, the online voter registration system is housed on the Secretary of State's website. So an individual can go directly to the Secretary of State's website, or they can go through the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections website where we have a link to the state. For me, that's an easy way to go. You come to our website, boe.cuyahogacounty.gov, and hit the link, which will take you to the Secretary of State's website. Now, besides being an electronic form, there are some differences with it being online, and that is registering online does require an individual to populate both their driver's license or state ID number and the last 4 digits of their social security number. So in the paper form, it's an either or, driver's license or the last 4 of social. And in the electronic version, it is both driver's license and last 4. And part of the reasoning is because you can't sign, well, you could, but you shouldn't sign your computer screen. We won't see your signature. So by providing both of those pieces of information, it is a way for us at the Board of Elections to have another layer of authentication of this is who we think it is, but also it's key because this is how we get a signature on file for you in our Cuyahoga County system. It is the signature that you have on file with the BMV that is sent over to the Board of Elections as your official voter signature. So that is why they want both. 1, so we can get your signature, and 2, it's another layer of authentication because you aren't physically signing the form. And on that form online, similarly, you're going to put your name, address, your date of birth. You will put both driver's license or state ID and the last 4 of your social. And then this is a benefit of the form is that the form highlights the required fields, and it will not let you advance unless you populate all of those required fields. So that's helpful. It reduces the number of invalid registrations because there's a missing field on the card. Now, instantaneously, that information that you put on in the identification section of the online form is shared with the BMV. And they're looking at the name and the license number that you put on there, and they're seeing if that is an exact match with what they have. If it is, that comes back and it's approved and you're able to move on and submit. If it is not, then I will give you a notation that that they would recommend that you complete a paper form and set that in. If it does go through and submits with a mismatch on the BMV, you'll get into that situation in which we'll send you that 10C confirmation. You'll be in an inactive status, because that information couldn't be confirmed. Now, when you complete your online form, the Secretary of State sends the Board of Elections, it'll send us the following day a data file that has all the information that we need to upload into our registration system, so we have a record of you being registered. So it does happen quickly, and it doesn't close. So it's open 24 hours a day, that online system. And when we get that data file and we apply it to our database, just like with the paper card, we will go ahead and mail you an acknowledgement notice that has all that information, your precinct, your poll place, your districts, and if it comes back undeliverable, we'll send the confirmation and all those things. So all those processes happen the same, whether it is a paper registration or whether it's an online registration. Now, here's a quick statistic regarding paper versus online registrations. And this is just to Cuyahoga County, and this is in 2026. So far this year, up to this point in time, Cuyahoga County has received just over 15,600 paper registration forms. So 15,600 paper registrations. And we received about 36,800 online registrations. So more than double online registrations. People in Cuyahoga County, and more so across the state now, prefer to use the online system versus the paper system. But again, they're both valid. They're both good, and they have the same value in that when processed and everything is complete and validated, you get the same privileges regardless if you did it online or via the mail. So those were the main things that I wanted to look at. I'm going to go ahead and pause now and try to take a look at the chat and come back to you in a minute and see what we can do here. Okay, I'm going to answer a couple here, and then I'm going to pause again. One of the questions that I see was, if someone has an older signature, should they fill out a new paper registration form? The answer is yes, whatever you're going to use to sign petitions, or if you're going to vote at the polls or early in person and you're signing a poll book, the signature that you want the Board of Elections to utilize for validation purposes, you need to provide that to us. Meaning that if you have changed your signature which many people do over time, you do need to update your registration form. Get us that paper card. We will process that. We will then, even if all the information is the same except for the registration, we will go ahead and we will update your registration so that is on record. But in our system, we also will have the most current card and we'll have the previous card too. So we do keep both of those electronically in our system. We try to attach those signatures so we can have multiple things to be able to verify who you are. Another question I saw was regarding Ohio college students from other states, and they have a driver's license from a non-Ohio state, and so they cannot register online. That's correct. In order to use the online system, you have to have a valid Ohio driver's license in order to use that system. Same thing if they don't have a Ohio driver's license and they put an out-of-state driver's license number on a paper card. When we process that, it will come back as a mismatch through the automated process, and that person will be placed in an inactive status, and meaning they must vote provisional. And if they appear at the polls, they need to provide that Ohio driver's license information. And if they don't have it, that won't be valid. So that is, it impacts the online system and it impacts the automated pre-check for that individual. All right, let me put you back on pause. All right, I see a couple comments here regarding phone number. And so if a phone number is put on the registration card, we will put that in our system. However, it is shielded from public record laws. So the phone number would not be given out as part of a public records request. So know that. And it is helpful to have a phone number. You never know when again, could even be with, say, a vote by mail application, and we're unsure of something because we're processing those through the voter registration database also. And if we have a phone number, it gives us the ability to call and get in touch with someone or through provisional processes. So that is relative to phone numbers. All right, going to go back on mute. All right, so I'm going to answer just two more questions and then we're going to end this. But again, we will have these questions saved and we'll work on a FAQ document. So question number one that I wanted to hit on had to do if you've moved but haven't updated your driver's license yet, can you still register at your new address? If you move, you should be updating the Board of Elections with your new address. So like a social security number, your driver's license number doesn't change as you move. Your Ohio driver's license sticks with you even if you change addresses. So you need to go ahead and update that with us and get to the BMV to go ahead and update that with them also. But I would not pause. I would go ahead and make that registration update. And the other item I was going to hit on real quick was it has to deal with printing and cursive. In several school districts, they don't teach script or cursive writing anymore. And so some folks then all they know how to do is print their names. A printed name is a valid signature if on the registration card, in the signature box, the individual prints their name in that box. So they would print their name in the name field, and on the signature field, they would print their name. And that would be their legal version of their registration signature. Same thing if they are at the BMV and they print their name in the BMV signature pad at there, that would come over to us and that would be their official record. And in fact, if they print their name in the signature box, then they decide later on that they want to sign in cursive or script their name, that would be a mismatch. And then unless they would provide a new registration card with that new script cursive style signature to become their new official signature. So with that, I do want to thank everyone for joining us today. I apologize for the technical difficulties at the start, but thank you for hanging with us. And again, we will work on another document that we can publish up on our website for individuals who couldn't be with us today to get this information. Hope everyone has a great day. And again, you can reach us with questions at 216-443-8683. You can email us at BOE or go to our website, I'm sorry, at boe.cuyahogacounty.gov. A lot of good information there. And if you are unsure, don't hesitate to pick up that phone and talk to one of our operators here at the board. Everybody has a great day.